Yeah, so this is the 2001 Slayer sword in Australia, and it was around 9/11 time. And after this, there was a crackdown on swords. So I mean, I don't know exactly what the dates were, but the next few years we had like the Slayer hammer and the Slayer shield, and frankly, I wasn't that disappointed when I didn't win them. But
Yeah.
you know.
You've got the magnum opus right there.
Yeah. So I did okay. Yeah.
Very, very cool. And is it quite weighty or?
Yeah, it's like 5 feet long. It's like this big Spanish made sword.
Wow.
And it's kind of insane. Yeah, it's like a big broadsword.
It's beautiful.
So yes, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Have you ever, in a quiet moment, swung it at something?
Actually, no.
Yep.
But it's now you mention it. Maybe I should.
It's like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, maybe I should give it a go. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't maybe do some like stretches.
Yeah.
Before.
It is pretty weighty, so I have to warm up a bit.
Yeah. We actually have a friend of the store who is a welder and sort of a smith in his part-time.
Oh, cool.
He made us a sword very similar in size.
Nice.
I'm not sure weight-wise.
Yeah.
But when we were knocking down our old office at Gawler, we actually got the sword and we swung it a few times at the at the Jip Rock and whatnot. It just goes straight through it like paper. It's a powerful feeling.
That sounds like fun. Yeah. Next time I'm doing a demolition, I'll bring the sword.
Keep it in mind. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, beauty. Alrighty. So how did you get into this world? Like what drew you into this world, and what got you into this world, and then what's drawn you and kept you in here?
Like I've been in this world for a long time now. When I was a teenager, I was super into models, making things. I was in my local hobby shop all the time, which I think was the one in Mundell Mall at the time. Yeah, going back a few decades.
Is this where you met Matt Budd? He was just telling me that he's known you since he was 16.
Yeah, it would have been. Yes. So I didn't really encounter miniatures till I was in my mid-teens. And the first ones I came across were Prince August, old medals. And then I saw some GW stuff in a shop. Never seen it before. In fact, I bought a secondhand box of the original plastic Space Marines. I didn't even know what they were. I just went, oh, they look like little robot dudes. They're cool. I'll get those. And that was about the time the original Space Hulk came out. And White Dwarf 113 was the first one I purchased, and that was kind of the end. Yeah, that was it. It was kind of like hooked after that. And it was not easy at all to get hold of GW miniatures in Adelaide. I had to mail order everything from the UK. So that was, so White Dwarf, I mean, this is pre-internet even. So White Dwarf was like your lifeblood. You just hung out for every issue. And and of course started following the demons in the US. In the UK, because that was the only one.
Yep.
And and sort of like, oh my God, that would be amazing to enter that, but it wasn't possible. But that was where I started. But prior to discovering miniatures, I was into the little 1 to 35 soldiers or Japanese kits or anything I can get my hands on, really.
Yep. And what kept you here?
Probably the invention of the internet. Look, it was just a thing I did myself. But then once I got involved in the demons here and was winning stuff and became known to GW, I was doing stuff that was appearing in codexes and White Dwarfs and things. So I became quite known in the hobby, which was nice. And then, that was sort of as the internet was taking off as well. So that kind of also coincided. And it was always a hobby. It was not my primary job. But then eventually, you know, once we got into the COVID years, because my primary job was in live theatre.
Wow.
And that, you know, I'm a designer for live theatre. And, you know,
Set design?
Hmm?
Set design?
Yeah, set and costume design, yeah.
Oh, cool.
But that all just, you know, that closed down overnight during COVID. And, you know, I had the miniature thing on the side, and I was selling, you know, I had my own range of miniatures, but I thought, well, okay, there's no more theatre, let's make miniatures, you know, and that really took off in that period.
Yeah, cool. Have you designed anything for Games Workshop in terms of like the miniature space?
I've never worked for Games Workshop.
Yep.
I've done a lot of what they used to do was when they had a new release coming out, they'd send me the sprues and stuff and say, oh, you know, do you want to just paint this up or do a conversion or whatever? So there were things like, it was one of the earlier generations of the plastic Space Marines.
Yep.
They sent me some sprues and they said, oh, come up with your own chapter.
Okay.
So that was, so I did sort of a samurai-inspired chapter called The Emperor's Shadows. And it's funny now because if you look for them on the internet, you'll find all these people that have made Emperor's Shadows Space Marines. And people have written to me and asked me about the lore and the background. I'm like, I really just painted them. Colors and some insignia. I didn't kind of go into the lore, but please feel free to fill in the spaces yourself. That's
cool.
Fine.
And did you sort of like amalgamate several different models, or did you create new, you know, like new swords or new outfits or something for the samurais?
They're pretty basic conversions, you know, because they wanted to showcase the kit. So I didn't go too outside the kit. You know, I kept it fairly within the current range, but really did it with the paint job and the banners and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. It sounds like you've got quite a following online at the moment as well. So online, and you sort of like really started launching into this career from an online path. Tell us about your store.
Well, I only sell online. I only sell direct at the moment.
Yep.
Although I do have a digital is becoming a thing. So I do have my Mini Factory account, and I do sell some digital stuff on there. But yes, I've just got victoriaminiatures.com. That's the store. The store has existed in one way or another for, it would be over 10 years now, probably 15 years online. And so, yeah, just sell direct. And we ship everything. Well, I've always had a problem with manufacture. That's always been an issue, right? Because I really wanted to manufacture in Australia, but I've spent the better part of 10 years trying to make that happen. And only recently, with the advent of digital printing, 3D printing, has that become in any way viable. So most of our manufacture is still in the US.
Yep.
For Australian customers, we do manufacture in Sydney.
Yep. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And I know a little bit about the manufacturing process. I actually studied a Bachelor of Industrial Design. So
cool.
molds and creating molds can be like $100,000 apparently per mold, and then injection molding and
look, I would have loved to have done plastic injection molding. That was always the gold standard. I never got big enough to have the amount of capital you need to set that up.
Yeah.
But really, digital, the 3D printing is bypassed that process.
Yeah.
So you've got all these boutique companies like myself that we don't need to make $10,000 tools for things. We can, we can just go straight to print.
Yeah. So, it's a whole new world out there, isn't it? It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that I tool is plastic bases. Like, there we are. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
That's the only thing. But everything else is just printed, or we sell digital versions of them.
I guess they're replicable. You can do 100,000 bases and they don't really need to change, do they?
No, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And prior to that, we were buying them from someone else, and it turned out to be better just to make it, get. I've only got one base, but
Yeah.
once getting that tooled, and that's over $10,000 to do that.
Yeah.
But it's solved a problem.
Do you do that here in Australia, or is that in the US that you get
That's
them?
in the US. Like most of my customers are in the US.
Yep.
Only about 10% are in Australia, and that's literally just a population.
Yeah.
Issue.
Yep.
So yeah, the bases are made in the US. Yeah, we ship everywhere.
Yeah, beauty. Are you happy for me to put your website on the editorial?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, cool. Beauty. So was there a time, something that happened sort of in your painting past that really sort of like leveled up your painting experience?
I think probably competing in the Demons in the 2000s was the big thing, because and like this competition you guys have got coming up, I think is great because it just gives local painters somewhere to just test themselves and see what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, competing in the Demons, I think the first Australian Golden Demon it might have been 2018, but the first one I went in was 2019 in Sydney. I didn't win anything, but I learned a lot by not winning anything.
Yep.
And I went back the next year, and then I did start to win, and then I got the sword in 2001. But I kept on competing after that, and that always pushed you. It always pushed you really hard just to go that extra level to, try to. And a lot of that was just working out how do you win.
Yep. And was that experience gained from the feedback that judges gave you, or just sort of being around in that environment? Or
no, you didn't get to speak to the judges.
Yep.
In any way, shape, or form. That's more recent development.
Yep.
It was very, I guess, secretive. I guess. You didn't really know who the judges were. It was really, so the benefit I got from it was not from the judges as such. It was really just seeing all the other work. And when you watch competitions online, you tend to see what wins, but when you're there in person, you see what doesn't win. And that's the real difference when you compete.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And so I guess, was that sort of self-evaluation when you sort of looked at those things, or was there like a collaborative environment between the painters that sort of helped?
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Not back then. I mean, maybe it's a bit different now. I mean, there's the painting clubs and things, but it was completely solo, and everyone was competing against everyone else. And I was actually really surprised in the mid-2000s. I got to go to Europe and to the US. I went to the US in 2004. And because Australia, in those early years, it was very much like, this is my thing and I'm not going to share anything with you. I'll show you what I'm doing. It's all a secret. Then I went to the US, and particularly when I went to Europe in 2005, I was hanging around with all the European painters like Jeremy Bonamont, and we all went over and did the Cologne Golden Demons. And these guys, they rented a house in Brussels where we all just stayed for a week, and they all sat around the kitchen table painting together. And, they'd pass their thing to the guy next to them, go, oh, yeah, you want to do a bit on mine? You want to do a bit on mine? It's like this incredible collective, which is much more common now, but it certainly did not exist in Australia in those earlier years. Yeah.
That sounds a bit inspirational, seeing that.
Oh, it was, yeah, and these guys were all better than me.
Yep.
They were great, but they were really, really open and happy to share, and they just wanted to include everyone and go, hey, look, let's all just make great miniatures. They really wanted to help everyone, which was amazing.
That sounds like a great environment, and one I love. Like we kind of do have that here at our Prospect store. Every Friday, I'm not sure if you saw it, probably you were a little bit early in the day, but every Friday we'll get in between 8 and 12 people that will rock up and just paint together. And yeah. And they go from painting for a couple of hours and they'll just jump onto one of the tables and have a game with stuff they painted or stuff they've organized. It's really great. Really enjoy it.
That's really, really cool. And I think that's a lot more common now. I know there's a guild in Melbourne because I'm involved with the ArcCon thing over there, and yeah, it's really good, and it's really. But for me, when I was first painting, I mean, I was really just getting all my instruction from anything I could find, and a lot of that was. I think Mike McVeigh was the big painter for White Dwarf at the time, and he would put out painting guides. So, I just take those on, and you'd really just take anything you could, but it wasn't generally from other painters that you met in the flesh. And for a start, I was in Adelaide. There wasn't too many other painters at the time. Yeah.
How's painting evolved over the time that you've been in the industry, and sort of what's next?
Oh, it's gone mad. I mean, and the stuff I was doing back then, I mean, the standard now is like way higher, to be frank. I mean, it's kind of just built on itself over the years. The things people are doing now is just insane, absolutely incredible. Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to these days is, look, probably after I was into, I started to lose interest in competing. Probably in the late 2000s, there was a movement, or perhaps we're sort of going into the teens. There was a movement where a good paint job was one that had no brush marks whatsoever. It was like this, it looked like being painted by a computer. It was like super, super smooth blends, and that was all that mattered. And that never inspired me. I mean, my stuff is not that smooth. Frankly, can't be bothered. For me, I was always into composition, character, lighting, atmosphere, story. So I kind of lost interest in competing, I guess, in those years. It wasn't really that interesting for me. But these days, I think you get more of a blend of everything. You get your incredible paint jobs as well as your storytellers and your conversions and your character people, and it's sort of all going on.
Yeah, cool. What do you see in the future? Like, where do you see the direction?
If I knew, I'd be entering the next Demons.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, look, the standard just gets better and better every single year, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm seeing people incorporating more 3D printing into their entries. That my stuff preceded that. I did a lot of conversion work, but it was all putty and tools and hand done. So yeah, you see a lot of people utilizing 3D printing, and then they sort of butt up against, well, how much of that is breaching copyright because you're sort of copying GW models, and then there's the whole AI controversy that rears its head every now and again. So look, I don't know. I think the bottom line is, you need a compelling subject and a good paint job and good composition.
Yep.
And that's always going to win, but the technology just changes constantly and so quickly.
Yep. I'm a painting neophyte. So one thing that I've seen just recently, I don't know if this is a common theme, but it seems like storytelling in your model in models seem like it's something that's really developing. I'm not sure if is that true, or is that just something that that I've observed that's not really correct?
No, I think you're correct. I think it's always been there, and it was a very big part of my work, like huge work. I mean, like coming from a theatre background too, like I really saw the miniatures like actors in a scene.
Yeah,
I guess so. Even with a single model, you could tell a story. So storytelling for me is probably my favorite part of it. Is I would do dioramas that had stories, but you can get a story out of a single model, and
Yeah.
that's amazing if you can do that.
Mm.
That's for me, that's probably the most exciting thing. That's more exciting than no brush lines.
Yeah. For me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much of that does I guess in the competitive world, how much does that sort of weigh on judges' minds about storytelling and telling a story through their
It depends on the judge.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the issue with competing too, is that it's so subjective.
Mm.
The judges can come in and know, they can judge the paint job technically, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be an element to it that's subjective. And that's why it's important to keep on competing.
Yep.
Because it's always like when I was doing the Demons, they would bring a head judge over from the design studio in the UK, and it was a different person every year.
Yep.
So that person's going to look for something different every year. This person might go, "Oh, I love orcs. I'm going to pick an orc for the winner."
Yep.
Well, you don't know that till the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So I think storytelling for me personally, I love it. It's really exciting. Character and story, probably my favorite things. But it depends on the judge.
Yeah. Is there a way when you, I guess, are in a room with other judges and you've got the models in front of you, is there a way that you actively attempt, yourself or other judges that you've seen actively attempt to remove that bias that they sort of can walk in with, or is that all part of it?
Well, I think that's a really good thing about having more than one judge these days. Like I think now it's almost standard that you have more than one judge.
Yep.
I think that's really important. Because all of you, say you got 3, which seems to be standard, you're going to be looking for different things.
Mm.
For me, it's mostly going to be probably the first. I'm probably going to be the last one that drills down to every last brush stroke. I'm going to be wanting to look at the picture that I'm seeing.
Mm.
But then, like we did Arc Fest a couple of years ago with the guys from Squidmar, and they're way superior painters to me, and they had a different eye. I mean, in the end, we basically agreed, but it was really good to get that, just that different eye, because they say, "Oh, but look at this bit on this miniature here. This is amazing," or But I'd say, "Oh, but look at this. This is. I just love the lighting and the color, the choice of colors and the composition. So it's very subjective, and having more judges doesn't necessarily make it less subjective, because everyone.
Yeah, I think 3 is a good number. I've sat on judging panels for barista competitions.
Oh yeah.
Back in my 20s, I was quite involved in that world, and we had judges of 4, and it's quite a subjective thing. You're tasting, and it's really hard to. It's really hard to. Well, it's impossible to be objective about it, because there's just so many different things you have to keep in mind. So I think 3 is a good amount, because 4 can get a little bit unusual.
We did Armies on Parade at Adepticon this year just now, and I think there were about 6 of us judging, but I mean, it was a big job too, so that was good.
Yeah.
But there was quite a lot of debate.
Yeah. We kind of had like a judge's calibration anytime that I've judged before, and that you're trying to calibrate, but it can be quite difficult still. So anyway, beside the point.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And like the thing with the Armies on Parade, they actually gave each of us a judge's choice, which was nice.
Okay, cool.
So we could, we got the overall winners and so on, but then each of us were allowed to go, but I really like that one. So that was, yeah.
Awesome. Are there any processes in painting that are unique to you? And what sort of inspired you to start doing them?
Well, I'm credited with being the pioneer of the object source lighting in miniatures.
Oh, that's amazing. That's one of my favorite thing about miniatures.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm completely new to it, but I have like one of the first things I said, because my brother-in-law paints, one of the first things I said to him is, how do you work out, you got a lightsaber, let's just say, how do you work out what colors you put on the body to reflect that the lightsaber is real? And then also, how do you work out where the light is actually coming from to create that, to create the realism within the model? So I'm super impressed that I'm talking to the person that started that. That's so cool.
Well, just remember, light only travels in straight lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So my Golden Demon winning, my sword winning entry in 2001 was a Morton diorama. It's called The Rescue of Sister Joan, and it has object source lighting, and that was the first time anyone had done that in this particular. Well, as far as I know, so they say that anyone had done it in this hobby.
Yep.
And this diorama, yeah, The Rescue of Sister Joan, you can find it online. It's currently at Warhammer World. But and look, compared to what people are doing now, it's a very simple object source lighting. But yeah, that was, so no one had seen that done in Warhammer or minis, and that was what won it for me. And again, it's you don't know. You don't know on the day that that's going to be the case. So yeah, I kept doing some object source lighting things for future competitions, but that whole thing has been taken up by, it's kind of standard, like people do it all the time, and they've done it to just such incredible levels these days, which is just extraordinary to see. Yeah.
When you have a model on the table, I'm going to use this as a as a pretend model, and you it's quite clear that someone has shaded it in a certain way that indicates that light should be coming from this direction, let's just say. How do you sort of judge that? Do you deliberately move the model into the direction of the incoming light to sort of judge that, or do you just kind of just look at it and turn it around or walk around it? Or
well, when I did this particular model, and it was the first time I attempted the technique, I actually, it's basically a guy just holding a torch, and I use a brick wall behind him to kind of
cool,
reflect the light.
Yeah, wow.
But I did it. I ended up, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I basically just I lit a match and just put it, because I already painted the diorama. I'd already painted it, and I thought, oh, this would be cool if I painted in the lighting. And that was partly coming from my theatrical background too. I was thinking, like, light it like a theatrical scene. So I thought, I already painted it, and it was only a few days till the demons. I thought, oh, shall I have a go at this lighting thing? I might just screw it up. Yeah, let's just do it. So I lit a match and just put it where the guy's torch is, and looked at what it did to the rest of the scene.
Yeah.
And how it affected things, and kind of followed that. That's
so cool.
But yeah, that's a good thing you can do now. I mean, you can get such little LED lights and things like that, and you can even you can also airbrush your light source too. As I said, light travels in straight lines, so if you can get an airbrush, happening like your torch, it's that works too. So
that's so brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for pioneering that, because it was one of the first things I noticed, and one of the most important things to me looking at models. So,
well, that's cool. Yeah, I think people were doing it. I mean, I didn't have much exposure to historical modeling, but I think people were probably doing it in historical models. So, not like I was the first person in the world to ever do it, but it was the first time it appeared in Warhammer, I guess. Is what happened. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, and I said half an hour, and we've hit half an hour.
Well, I'm happy to answer anything else if you got.
Yeah, I think the only other real question was, like, how do you look at your craft differently to other people?
I I don't know how other people look at theirs. So
Yeah, fickle.
hard to say. I mean, everyone's different. I mean, and there's different things that people love about the hobby. I think for me, always comes down to character, like wanting to create little characters in little dramatic situations. And I try to bring that into even my miniature range, which is mostly armies, but I still have that. That's what I enjoy about it. Yeah, is character.